Welcome to the Latino Nation podcast. We're here to celebrate the power, passion, and beauty of our culture. We share amazing Latino stories to entertain and inspire. I'm your host, Carmen Ramirez, marketing exec and badass mom, with my co-host, Eric Osuna, founder of Latin Live. And together with you, we are Latino Nation. Welcome to another episode of Latino Nation. My name is Carmen Ramirez, and joining me today is my co-host,
Eric Osuna from Latin Live.
And we have an amazing guest with us. If you can't recognize his face as of yet, I'm pretty sure after Eric dives into who we have as a guest today, you're going to pretty much be wanting to follow this guy everywhere on social media. So Eric, without further ado, can you please introduce our guest for us?
So today's guest, we really want to bring you people that are going to inspire you to be the best that you can be and to motivate you in different spaces, in tech, in fashion. And today, in terms of the cuisine space, I'm not talking about the United States. I'm talking about the world. Okay. So this is big. This is big. Who represents Latin culture in, a lot of different continents, whether it be Latin America, Cuba, Spain. And I think he personifies, something that I'm very proud to say, I think represents the Latino
really big and
culture
grande.
Worldwide.
Yeah,
worldwide. And he's done so much in his life and his career. And I really want to know who Jose Garces is, an iron chef, a entrepreneur that's gone on to build amazing restaurants. I know I'd love to talk about his farm a little bit too, if he's down with that. I think some sustainability. We have a lot of our listeners are big on sustainability and the green movement. So love to hear some of that.
We're definitely going to dive deep into the life of Jose Garces, which is an Ecuadorian American chef restaurant que le dio en la madre a Bobby Flay.
Just saying.
Born in Chicago, and you've pretty much done amazing things. You have a couple of restaurants in Philly, which is so funny. We just had one of our coworkers in the background was like, "Oh,
you had
a groupie
here."
Yeah, he was like, "This is restaurants," and he's very, very excited. I'm curious to dive into your world and tell us a little bit about yourself, Jose. Welcome to Latino Nation. Thank you for joining us.
Wow. Well, thanks for having me. That's quite an introduction, and I appreciate all of the flattery and the recognition. I've had what I would say is a pretty storied career, one that's I feel really fortunate to have had. I grew up in Chicago. Parents of Ecuadorian immigrants. They both immigrated in the late 1960s. My dad went to the University of Illinois, Chicago, came here from Ecuador really to seek an education in electrical engineering. And, along the way, my brothers and I were born in Chicago. So we were born and raised there and really had this pretty amazing, what I would say is an immigrant story. We were there growing up in Chicago and having our Latin roots representing at home, but also adjusting to life in Chicago at school and, culturally and socially. So I had this nice balance, I would say, of Latin culture along with kind of, really learning to immerse myself in American and U.S. culture. And so that was a lot of my upbringing, a lot of family visits from grandmas and aunts and uncles from Ecuador. And that's really where I feel like I got my passion for food. We're a food family, an agrarian family from Ecuador, a lot of history in growing food, raising livestock. And so the meals that we had were such an important part of our daily lives. So I had a great upbringing, and I think it was exposed to a lot of great cultural folks in my family.
That's amazing. So I'm pretty sure you weren't the type that would go grab a fast food restaurant just to get the family together.
Yeah. No,
It was more.
yeah, my grandma, Mamita Amada, who was our matriarch in our family, was an amazing cook, and I have vivid memories of the weekend meals, which were carne asada, ceviche de camarones, empanadas, arepas, which all those things I've translated for my kids. I have older teenagers now, and so yeah, for me, it's always been about passing on traditions to our loved ones, and luckily, I've had a platform where I could share my cultural inspirations through food for some time now.
That's amazing. How was it like for you to grow up in Chicago? I heard you mention something along the lines that you had to adapt.
And what part of
Um,
Chicago, by the way, just for those? We have a lot of people in Chicago to follow up.
Yeah, so I grew up in the Northwest Side. Mostly, if you know Chicago, it's a multicultural neighborhoods. Belmont and Cicero, Irving and Central, like right in those areas, and
Good Italian
good
food.
Italian food. Yeah, good Italian food, good
mhm.
Polish food, good Mexican food. Yeah, a nice banquet of many cultures that are represented in those neighborhoods. And I think for us, again, I tell it's an immigrant story because my dad went to school and he was working at the same time trying to raise kids, so we didn't have a lot of call it, I would say, family stability. We were moving, every few years we would be in another apartment, just trying to make ends meet. And my dad's both my mom and dad were really about educating us and getting us the best experience we could. And I think there were certainly adjustments. I think about that time. It was the 1970s, early 80s, and Chicago is while it's still pretty racially diverse, it still has its own. It's set in its own. Has some customs, I would say that. And I remember as a kid, as a Latino growing up, feeling some racial tension even at an early age. Where it was like, whoa, what's happening here? What is this all
Right.
about? And so, at an early age, I learned to kind of confront that and deal with it and adapt.
Mhm.
Dude, you came from a solid background. I mean, I definitely think that the foundation you started on, the fact that your parents came to the United States, not typical, and Eric, you probably might say this as well or share the same idea is when, for example, in my case, my parents came, his idea was like, I'm coming to make money more so than an education. And your parents were the opposite of what a lot of Latinos come to the United States for, they came to get the education. And that's a solid foundation that I feel like a lot of people don't really get to explore and be a part of, and that's amazing. I mean, it turned out really well for you guys. Yeah, you went through some changes, you went here and there just like all Latinos do here in the United States, but it's a proven fact that education will always just make you that much more powerful,
So
whether it is
important.
in your dreams and anything that you want to accomplish. You always want to have that education behind it and have that plan B to fall back on in case the taco truck doesn't work for you and stuff like
No, absolutely, and
Career.
and
Oh yeah.
that's been so important, and I'm glad you mentioned that. My dad was really he was at the forefront of letting us know how important it was to achieve a higher education, and I think that those lessons and kind of the hard work that I've gone through in the restaurant industry and has given me direction for my kids and how the emphasis I've put on their education and then kind of getting onto the next level of learning. I'm proud to say my daughter Olivia, who's 18, will be going to Loyola of New Orleans. She received the Merit Scholarship
Wow.
recently, so I'm really excited for her. And my son
Wow.
Andres he starts high school next year, and so I'm really pumped for him. And he's grown a lot as an academic. So it really shows the generations and kind of how important it is to pass on those good messages and learning curves to give the younger generation some hope and really guidance.
That's
Yeah, and
crazy.
you know,
That's
you're
that's good.
you are such a good example for your kids too, because you are so accomplished, chef.
Thank you.
Uh, I think you're a great example for the Latin community, what can be possible through, so much effort on your behalf, your family's behalf.
Yeah.
And we're going to list your accomplishments in this post, because there are so many. I think they would take up the whole show if we,
If we talk about them.
but I think I want to ask you, of all of the accomplishments, right? And there's a lot: professional, obviously, familial, and everything else. But of of all your accomplishments, what do you think is your top one, top two that you're like, wow?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest ones I would say is just learning how to become a business person. It was not something that I grew up with. I wasn't exposed to certainly the restaurant business. I was not. I really started my career when I was about 21. I had gone to cooking school. I went to Kendall College in Chicago after a few years of undergrad, where I really wasn't feeling a drive towards any particular profession. And I thought, wow, like this really gives me some structure that worked for my personality, and learned that I had talent in cooking. So I had no idea that I could actually look at ingredients and make them really taste well and put combinations together. But then that process eventually evolved into, from being just a good cook to becoming a business person, someone who can look at opportunity and really find ways to be entrepreneurial. So that was not a skill that I thought I had or was even possible for me. And I think I feel most proud of that. And then I feel most proud of establishing a family and roots here in Philadelphia. I think it's important that as Latinos, we learn to lay some roots down and establish a base for our kids and our grandkids going forward, so that there is that I guess that union, but also that base in which we can all grow from. So I'm happy that I've lived in Philly 20 years after living in Chicago for 20 and New York for 5. I never thought Philadelphia would be my ultimate home, but it is. And it's done. The community's been great for myself professionally and my family. And I hope that remains.
That's amazing. I know that you mentioned, it was not easy, or it wasn't taught to you along the way how to be a businessman. I'm curious to know, what were some of the struggles you went through and how did you overcome them? Like, did anyone ever tell you you're not going to make it? This is not going to go anywhere in your time?
One thing about the restaurant industry and the chef community, while it's very, very friendly, and there's the colleagues, we all and peers kind of all get along. Don't mistake it for the competition, the competitive nature of it. And coming up in the industry in the mid to late 90s, you realize that everybody is really pushing to get ahead and move forward, and as chefs, as culinarians, as young entrepreneurs. And so my first step was opening my first restaurant, which was Amada. I named after my grandma in 2005. Mm-hmm. And I had really only been working for other folks for a long time. So this was my first time really stepping out, really taking a chance, betting on myself. I did it with a pretty large SBA loan, and a couple of business colleagues who decided to invest small amounts, but still were behind me enough. And that leap of faith was huge, because one, I went through, how to negotiate a lease, how to go through the banking process, a financing process, construction phase, all these different lessons that you learn as a business owner, and those were never really taught. I had to go through it from a personal experience standpoint, and so those lessons and fear, right, that comes along with that, because I remember, we had our my wife and I had our home as collateral on this loan,
Oh,
and,
that's
and
all.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
no a la casa. Si se pierde, perdemos nada.
That's your chief venting officer, right?
Yeah. And so, the first couple of weeks as we're growing this business, we're not hitting our projections. It's looking kind of light. And let me tell you, that experience alone will scare the daylight out of you. And then, as the work we kept doing on perfecting the food and perfecting our service and moving through what was, let's make the best restaurant experience for our guests. We pushed that through, and eventually, not only did we meet our projections, we started to exceed them. And then from that point forward, it was just an upward trajectory of, learning the business, learning how to grow it, but also other opportunity, which we're thankful for.
That's amazing. Now, you mentioned having your wife support you, which is also something very important. You had a support team behind you. Is there any type of ritual, any type of thing that you would do to kind of help yourself sleep? You were saying in the beginning you weren't hitting the mark where you guys thought you were doing. I'm pretty sure lack of sleep, the stress. How did you deal with all of that?
Well, I think, unfortunately for me, I was a younger man at that time, and I wasn't really as astute as I am now in terms of the help, the help that one could get from, meditation and being mindful and being present, and really, learning. I did go through quite a bit of just cognitive lessons along the way. And so I wish I had what I knew now then. So I think then I just probably just woke up with a little bit of sweat and just put my work boots on and got to it. But I think now, the thing I would say is, even though it's a different time, and certainly a different, a special time, it really, I think, benefits folks, and certainly benefits me, to have some time to check in with myself, check in, have some body awareness, some mind awareness, and really put things into perspective, so that I have a much calmer, less stressful, and better outlook during the day.
Mindfulness and meditating, that's something we were talking about earlier. I don't feel like a lot of Latinos out there. So if you're listening to the show and this is something new to you, and you're like, wait, what is this mindfulness? What is this meditation? And what is that going to do for me? Like, it's not going to pay the bills.
Yes.
I think
Sometimes it's just a simple, one things that I do, sometimes it's just a simple, like, I do morning hikes, and I have luck to have like a nice, some walking trails near me. And that's, sometimes I think when you think about mindfulness, sometimes it feels, very spiritual or deep, but it's really just having some time to check in and get yourself balanced and think through things in a peaceful way. And it's really not that difficult. You can do it pretty easily. And I think it's just a matter of letting people know how simple and effective it can be.
A lot of Latinos are aspiring to be better, to do better, we're here to obviously better our lives, right? As immigrants and as parents for kids of immigrants. And on this show, we're lucky enough to be able to, and in our careers, we've been lucky enough to meet a lot of, very successful people.
Mm-hmm.
And one element that I see as a background to a lot of them, like a common denominator, is meditation
For sure.
and mindfulness. And, I think for the Latino community, it's kind of a new, thing, but it's, if you're aspiring to be the best, right? The best chef Latino chef in the world, has launched some of the most successful restaurants. And I mean, I can go on and on and on. Iron Chef, father, blah, blah, blah. There's so many, there's so many things. And, he's talking about, you want to be like him, you want to be other people have that same success. This is part of what we're hearing.
Right. That's exactly. So it's not easy, obviously, but tampoco no es imposible. It's not impossible for someone to accomplish. I think that, Jose, you are such an inspiration to many kids out there. We live here closer to the Bay Area. There's particularly tons of culinary schools. In Napa también hay un castillo. There's a big castle where there's just everything is evolved around the food. And I think families come together around food. And dude, it's just an amazing talent that you discovered on yourself. And that the fact that you realized and you stopped yourself in school too. You mentioned earlier, Jose, that you realized that it wasn't calling your passion. It wasn't doing something. So you kind of flipped a switch and you're like, wait, let me do something about this. And I think that's super important too, because I feel like a lot of the times as Latinos, we're kind of just trying to figure ourselves out in life. And sometimes even though you're not happy where you're at, you still stay there. You're like, oh, pues, we'll see what happens. And it's almost like Jose mentioned earlier, like, hey, you have to find yourself. You have to kind of check in with yourself. And if you're good, whatever you project eventually, whatever plans you have, they're going to be good. You got to put the little focus on and go for it. How did you end up, Jose, in Iron Chef? How did that world, like, how?
Yeah, it's pretty, it was a pretty interesting, and I would say a pretty wild story. In 2005, I opened Amada, and I said that was my first restaurant on my own. I started to get some national attention. I was in Food and Wine magazine, Bon Appetit, kind of like hot new chef is doing some cool things with Spanish tapas. And so I feel like that PR that I was getting early on eventually caught the eye of Food Network. And they had a series that was called, obviously they had Iron Chef America, but then they started like the next Iron Chef, a competitive battle for 10 chefs. So in 2007, I auditioned and didn't make the cut. That was the first season of Next Iron Chef. And eventually Michael Simon went on and was the winner of that season. But they did invite me back that year to compete against Bobby Flay. And I beat Bobby in Battle Melon, which was pretty awesome. And that was, really an exciting moment in my career for sure, being on Food Network. I was a fan of the network for many years. And then
we're big fans.
Yes.
Yeah. And then in 2009, I got asked to audition again for season 2 of Next Iron Chef. And I made the cut. So I was amongst 10 other nationally known chefs, and we battled for weeks. We were in LA, we were in Tokyo, we were in New York, several battles. And I had, let me tell you, that was one of the hardest experiences, being sequestered, being away from your family, going into these like really stressful cooking situations where,
15 on the clock.
The hot lights.
Hot lights. I mean, I had one battle that was pretty crazy. It was a battle of Indian cuisine, and they had it said, recreate 5 of your favorite Indian dishes. Well, I hadn't cooked Indian food. I had eaten a lot of it, so I did my best to recreate from just palate and memory. And during that battle, that was a double elimination battle. That would have sent 3 of us to Tokyo for kind of the semifinals. And about 45 minutes in that battle, I had a really bad cut. And it was I was like bleeding. The medics came, they like stopped. They were like doing everything they could. I hit just a weird part in one of my fingers where it just was. And so the blood's eventually stopping, but I'm looking at the clock, and it was a 60-minute battle. And I think I was like out of it for about 10 minutes. I had things on the stove in the oven. I was just like, okay, all right, I'm going home. That's it. This is it.
No.
What's the time period here?
This is
how much
about.
time is that?
So that was in 2009, and that during that period was a 60-minute.
In that period when when you got the cut,
So the battle was about, it was about 60 minutes. I had that happen about minute 40, and then so about minute 50. I was pretty much out. So, and I was like, he was tending to my cuts, and I was turning things off on the stove, and I remember just like, okay. And then eventually the blood, they were able to bandage it up and get me back in. And I had 10 minutes left to kind of put my dishes, plate, cook whatever was cooking. And I ended up winning that battle somehow, which was
just sprinkled a little bit of blood, les puse un poquito de sazón.
Push through. You push through.
Push through. I had in that battle there was actually an Indian chef. His name was Jahangir Mehta. We're close friends now, and he was really pushing the envelope to win. And I think that was really what catapulted my confidence. And anytime I feel like the chips are down or like things seem like they're not going to go the right way, I always go back there and motivate myself. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great story. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Amazing story, yes.
Speaking about Tokyo and going to all these cool places and cities, I know, Eric, you had a question for him in regards to the world.
So I was super curious because we're big foodies and we love amazing food everywhere, all over the world. And I'm curious just about you in terms of, outside of your amazing restaurants and any associations you may have, right? So outside of that, so of the world, okay, so the entire world, the entire planet, and you don't have to say like top number one, top three, any mentionable place that just really stands out?
The top of the top.
Top of the top. Yeah. So, one of the things that I realized when I got into this career and that I really appreciated and loved is this this ability in the search for knowledge and curation of products, this, this kind of reason to travel, reason to like go and learn. And I really love that, from the beginning. I actually, when I finished culinary school, I wanted to go cook in France, and I didn't have the French language under my belt because they French classically trained us at culinary school. So one of my advisors said, "Hey, I know, got this. He's a priest. He owns a few restaurants in Spain and in Sevilla and Madrid and on the beach in Marbella. And he was like, hey, I could probably get you at least an interview and whatnot. And so, yeah, I was able to go and cook in Spain. And that's where I really got some Spanish cultural influence as far as food and the people. And it kind of like spurred my my yearning for travel. While I was there, I was able to go to Portugal and travel throughout Spain. And so that experience and kind of that thought that you can go and travel and really come back more enriched culturally and also from a food standpoint was amazing. But getting back to your point, to me, with all these great culinary travels that I've had, to me that my favorite, and I think really the appreciation for ingredients and cook styles is Tokyo, is Japan in general. I once had I had a $300 mango there. They have a
wait. Mango?
No,
that's an entire 8-course meal.
You're talking about when you bought the tree or something?
Yeah. Well, apparently this is in Takashimaya, which is there's a kind of a department store with a food court, but is a very elevated food court. Their appreciation for packaging and the way food is displayed was really apparent to me. But I walked across this aisle and it looked like these beautiful wood boxes that were created with like one mango inside of there, and it was like the story they said was, and I bought it because I had to try it, was they pruned the tree back so that a tree that might normally yield like 80 to 100 mangoes only yields about 10, and so all the nutrients go into these specific mangoes. So you know what? I had it. It was one of the best mangoes I've ever had. No
I was
doubt.
going to ask you, was it worth the $300?
Gosh, well, it was just the texture.
Yeah.
Was just amazing. The sweetness, the call it I think from a textural standpoint, it was just amazing. But if you go to the markets in Japan, I was able to go to Tsukiji market, the fish market, which I think they moved now, but the amazing seafood, the produce markets. I mean, the strawberries were just beautiful. And I think in Japan, what's cool is there are restaurants, but they specialize in one particular style of cooking, right? Whether it's sushi, whether it's teppanyaki, whether it's yakitori, whether it's ramen, you go there for that particular style of cooking, and they just excel at it. And I think that's also kind of my takeaway from it. But it's just one amazing place, but there are certainly many more right behind. We could talk all day about food journeys for sure.
I'm pretty sure. Well, as long as they don't pull that little marketing stunt on you and box up the food good for you and charge you $300 for
my mouth was watering as he was talking.
As he was describing it. You know what I was thinking when you were describing that story, Jose? I was thinking about, there's this video on YouTube. It was a very famous video when they talk about marketing. You know, I've done marketing for a while now. So there's this guy and he's like, dude, it's so simple that si tú vendes una pluma, it could be a random little pen, but if you make this pen be the pen and you just sell it in a way that you make people's mind go to it, people are gonna buy it.
I'm doing the math on the mango. I'm like, okay, so if there's 300 mangoes, but now there's 10, so he's actually eating 20 mangoes. Plus, you know, I'm like adding all the nutrients.
Dude, that is awesome. That's a great way for them to have put it out there. And the fact that you actually got to experience that, it's amazing. It just comes to show, you know, that you were put in places in strategic ways, in moments that made you appreciate what you were doing even more. And having that opportunity, what would you tell someone who's kind of in the same boat of wanting to do something with the kitchen, but doesn't necessarily have I don't want to say the guts, but you know, the ability to be like, I can make this happen? What would you tell that young Jose Garces?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, there's a lot of fear in going out on your own, right? There's a lot of, you know, you end up, and I think it's maybe cultural, the fear of failure. And I think that, you know, as Latinos, we need to get through that and know that, you know, that it's okay if you did fail, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but you bet on yourself. And that's the biggest thing I want in. And I tell my kids, I want you guys to bet on yourselves, bet on you. I bet on myself every day. I go out and I know I can control my destiny and do good out there, as long as, you know, I'm in the right place. And I think that's the biggest message is, don't be afraid to fail. Believe in yourself, believe in your vision, believe in your gut instinct, and just go for it. You know, and again, if for whatever reason it doesn't work out, just dust yourself off and keep going.
That's amazing. You know, just pick yourself back up. I think that's a lot of the things that we've shared along the podcast.
Go back to that moment where you cut your finger. Go back.
It all goes back to when you least expected it and something happened, it just, the power of it, you know, that's amazing. I'm super excited for hearing all these stories. You know, not only does it empower me as a Latina, it also makes me feel like, you know, sometimes in the society we live in, Latinos get put down a lot. You know, there's not a lot to look up to, and those that you do look up to, there's always something that follows them that might necessarily fit into our core as well. But when you do get a chance to meet people like yourself, Jose, and people that we've had on the podcast, it's a signal that, you know, you can accomplish things that you want to do. And it does take a little bit of work. I'm not going to say it's not an easy thing. It's not like Jose woke up and he's like, his grandma gave him the recipe book and he just started doing it and it just happened. And then he did all the empanadas and everyone loved it. No, it definitely took for you to believe in yourself, to get to know yourself and to push yourself. And ultimately, you know, anything is possible. We've seen it with Jose now becoming the next Iron Chef winner. I mean, how was it like for you? I'm so curious, when you were the winner, when you were against Bobby Flay.
Yeah.
What did that make you feel? I mean, Bobby Flay, I think a lot of people might know him. You know, he has a name for himself, and then here comes Jose Garces, and he ends up taking the title. What happened?
Well, I followed Bobby for many years and appreciated his food and a little bit of his bravado and how he handled himself and how he put himself out there as a chef. So for me, it was battling, you know, someone who I looked up to, and so it was special. It was special to have beaten him. And, you know, go on and eventually to be his friend and be able to, you know, hang out at South Beach Food and Wine. He has this brunch with Bobby and eat stone crabs and get to, like, you know, appreciate the trials and tribulations that he's been through as a chef. So, you know, with Iron Chef, I've had several moments of battles. So I've had almost like 25 battles under my belt there, and came across some competitors that were really tough. And then also had some learning moments as well as a chef. It really does, that 60 minutes of just blazing, cooking, trying to cook 25 dishes in a short period of time was challenging, but an experience I'll never forget, and I'll always take that with me.
That's amazing. So wow. I know that Eric mentioned something earlier when we were introducing you about a farm. What is all that about?
Yeah. So I actually and Eric, we hadn't touched base. So I had this farm. I had it. I recently let it go because it's, I learned a lot about farms. So I had it for about 10 years. So I bought a farm, and really it was initially just a retreat from the city and kind of like a place for my family. And it happened to have like an 8-acre garden. So the farm was initially intended as a kind of outlet for my family, but then we had this, an 8-acre garden, which we grew organic vegetables, microgreens for the restaurant. So I wanted to build in a kind of a sustainable integration with our restaurant, since we were selling food. It'd be great to like actually grow food and sell back to us. So a nice vertical integration that made sense. But what came about was really for me a life lesson about how much labor and how difficult it is to really grow organic food, non-GMO, no pesticides, and really it's a labor of love. And I think throughout the years it was, okay, how are we going to make this baby work this year? And right. So
try to pull the mango tree.
But let me tell you that there's nothing quite like the food that you grow for yourself and fresh. And I even so I have a townhouse here in Philadelphia, and we have a green roof, and I put a rooftop garden up here just to grow tomatoes and herbs and zucchini and some other like lettuces, and it's pretty awesome. I really think that people can learn a lot about themselves and their diets and how they eat just by growing their own food.
From the beginning, from the starting point. Oh, well, Michelle Obama did it for the White House. She switched that White House. A lot of people were like against it and stuff, but I think she also started a trend where a lot of people started realizing, not just in general, como dices tú, Jose, the benefits that it comes from knowing where your food is coming from and appreciating it a bit more, but just understanding the process and the hard work behind it and the love, like we started one too. I'm not gonna lie. In La Casa, we started a little garden with my son. He just came one day. He's like, hey, where do strawberries come from? And we're like, you know what? Let's show him the process. But once you actually have it, and once you actually get to see the first little green leaf, and once you actually get the first strawberry or the first green bean or the first serrano pepper, you're just like, oh my God.
Process,
yeah. Right? It just brings that food to a whole nother level because it came from the ground, because you put it in the ground. There's so much more love to it. It's such an amazing experience. And I'm glad that you had that concept about the farm. And Eric mentioned to me, you have a lot of other great concepts. There's a lot of things that you're doing. There's some sort of charity going on as well.
Yeah. The Garces Foundation, which is something I'm really proud of. So the Garces Foundation was founded here in Philadelphia with Beatrice Garces and myself. And we, what happened, and I'll tell you that kind of how it sprung. I had a restaurant called Tinto, a Basque tapas wine bar, and our butcher Felipe Lopez was there for 3 years. And then one day he didn't show up, and it was kind of odd. And the next day he didn't show up, and we were like, "Hey, what's going on with Felipe?" And then he came to us and said, he was really sick. He'd been sick for like a while, but he didn't show it at work. He was just trying to like keep it to himself. And then we sent him to get some care, and he was like, I'm afraid to go because I'm gonna get I think I'm gonna get deported, or I don't want to go to the doctor. I'm really scared of it, what could happen to me. So he went, and we were like, don't worry, we're gonna like kind of foster this process. We need some doctors here in town. And it turns out Felipe had stage 3 cancer, and unfortunately eventually passed away. and it was really, sad and obviously disheartening for many of us. And so we said at that point that we wanted to do something for the community, and mostly, for the immigrant undocumented workers that do a lot of the hard jobs here in our industry and many others. And so we started a foundation that really started with education. So creating literacy through job training programs, as well as community health days, where we were doing. Beatrice has a dental office, so she was doing free dental screenings, cholesterol screenings, diabetes screenings. We had volunteer doctors from the area that were doing these days to really help this community grow. And then this past year, with the pandemic in place, we started doing food pantry programs, because this workforce, when the faucet gets shut off, they're totally out on their own with no real assistance or help. So we delivered 8,000 food boxes for this community, mostly based in Philadelphia. There are folks from Puebla and from Mexico that, again, are a big part of our community. And I'm really happy to see that there's some reform that's happening to the new administration. That's great news. And so that's the Garces Foundation. We've had it for 8 years. It's another labor of love, something that, if you've ever been in the nonprofit world, you have to, getting funding and getting the funds needed to really run the programs are a battle every day. So, but it's something we've loved doing, and we'll continue to do.
That is amazing. Not only did you inspire to be amazing at what you were doing for your family, for yourself, and became probably you became one of the top chefs as a Latino, as an Ecuadorian and American as well. Giving back to the community was also part of your plan. And I think that just speaks so highly about you. Ahora sí que bow down to you, man. You made it happen. And there's so much people can learn from things like this, and then having the opportunity, and thank God having the platform now to get to know people in depth, and get to know really, how did it all become? How did you handle the stress? How did you do it? If there was a person right now that potentially would want to go along and follow your steps, what would be your best advice at this moment, besides obviously following themselves, believing in themselves?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that I've recognized and over time is that, nothing is really it's overnight. As long as you have a mission and you have your goals and you work towards those goals every day, it's kind of like you kind of just peck away at it, right? A little, it's certainly more of a marathon than a sprint. And what I found, and even in this past year, I set out to do some things, and even with the success I've had to really persevere and work and work hard to get there. And I'm not afraid to say that to anybody. That's really what it takes. But what becomes of it is the fruit of your labor. And so that is the lesson that I would say to most, young up and coming Latinos, whether you're in the culinary industry or any work that you're doing. It's really about continuing to push every day a little bit. Just keep climbing that mountain. Eventually you will get to the top.
I mean, restaurant business is having the biggest disruption in the history, I think, of the planet.
Of ever.
And I think right now, if you're not innovating, you just have to innovate right now. That's just the deal. And also, I think you have to kind of think ahead of the curve. And I think you're doing a lot of that as well, which I think is also on the cutting edge of, you have to flow with what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And
go with the flow.
See the light at the end of the tunnel too.
Definitely. I mean, I think, Eric, to that point, when, a year ago today, where it wasn't, during that time, we were, okay, we're in this, we're in a pandemic, but how long is it going to last? What is it? Is it, will we be back to normal by June or July? There was a lot of that kind of thinking. And I don't think we were getting many straight answers during that time. So I think I realized pretty quickly, didn't take long to realize that, as in the restaurant industry, this was going to be a long haul. This was going to be a fight for some time, and so yeah, I chose to create ghost concepts. So we recently launched too. Rustica pollo a la brasa, so a Peruvian-inspired rotisserie chicken concept with delicious Peruvian sides and empanadas. And then Livy's plant-based foods, which this past year I've also been working on retail food, which is a part of, again, coming out of the restaurant space. I realized that retail is probably where a lot of people are going to receive their food. So based on the inspiration around some development work that I was doing around plant-based foods, I launched Livy's, which is, more of a burger concept at this point, delicious, like that, when you think of vegan and veganism, sometimes it seems very like rigid and maybe not as like hearty or delicious, but let me
it just doesn't sound so tasty.
Let's just say not very Latino.
Yeah, but let me tell you, these burgers and this, like, we're making our own plant-based patties with soy rizo, black beans, quinoa. They're delicious. And when you I've found some amazing vegan cheeses, and then you just, you let your creativity go from there. So it's been a lot of fun. And yeah, I think, there's certainly many silver linings for those folks in the restaurant industry who have been able to pivot and think about how to get your product out there.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and you're also doing Latin live shows with us, which we've just partnered up on, and we're gonna doing that for a while as well.
We're so excited about that. The virtual cooking space. It's pretty awesome to see how folks who normally host events and want to entertain have now turned towards chefs as entertainers, because this is an activity obviously you could do at home. And so I'm really excited to partner with Eric on We Are Latin Live and start to, go down this journey of presenting, Latin inspired cooking classes to the public, and showing people what Latin culture is all about through food. And it's really, again, it's interactive. We're talking about maybe some music components, lots of fun in true Latino style. Like, let's keep it fun, let's keep it loose, and let's learn. But I'm excited about that opportunity.
Could you imagine Chef Garces in your living room or in your kitchen?
No, I did not. But I'm super stoked to be a part of it. And honestly, the fact that, typical Latina, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't the best cook. And I learned along the way, though. My mom growing up, she wasn't really taught either how to cook. Her mom was always working too. So my mom taught me what she could, which was burritos, and burritos. Like una tortilla con huevo, una tortilla con frijoles, and it was always, the typical carne asada and stuff like that. But growing up, and now that I have children, it's like, dang, I need to up my skills in cooking and know how to make a mac and cheese from scratch instead of a box. Yeah. So I went to YouTube, and there's amazing people sharing their stuff on YouTube. And I was like, okay. And then I started realizing, let go of a little bit of the rules. Don't necessarily put 1 teaspoon, put a little bit more. And then it's amazing. And having Jose Garces in my kitchen, allowing me to do some of the stuff he knows how to do, it's going to be mind blowing. It's something that you're definitely not going to want to miss. And who knows, you might just inspire yourself to know that you're a chef. You could be the next. Yeah,
definitely the next Iron Chef. And, to that point, when the summer came around, we decided to create these 8 to 10 minute cooking shorts called Cooking Space. And those are on chefgarces.com as well as YouTube at Chef Jose Garces. But it's 8 to 10 minute pieces of just, just home cooking. There's a full recipe in the link. And it's, that's my first foray. While I've been on television, it's my first foray into executive producing and kind of writing and getting into like production. It was so cool. I really enjoyed it. And we're looking forward to season 2 as well.
Oh, well, we wish you nothing but the best. We do want to thank you for your time and everything you've shared with us, everything you've inspired.
Amazing.
It's just mind blowing. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. You made food sound like it's the cutest, like it's the best. Like, me dio hambre. I'm not gonna lie. Like that mango, I'm gonna dream about that mango. If I ever go to Japan, I'm gonna look for that tree in that marketplace and that little box with the mango in it. But we really do appreciate your time and appreciate you coming on board with us for the podcast. And I definitely do appreciate people listening. If you have bumped into our podcast, make sure you subscribe to our channel, share it with your friends. And again, this is out here to inspire, to let us know that Latinos are doing big things, that Latinos can do big things, and that if you're a Latino, you can also do amazing things with yourself as well. So, Jose, muchas gracias. Thank you so much.
Gracias a ustedes.
Is there anything else you want to show or talk about before we cut loose?
Wrap up, yeah.
Guys, I am perfect. It's Friday. It's 55 here in Philly, and I'm going to go enjoy the weather. So thank you guys for having me, though. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Really amazing. Thank you so much, Jose. Thanks. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye
it was
now.
A pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.
Thanks for joining us today. We are the Latino Nation podcast presented by Latin Live. I'm your host, Carmen Ramirez, joined by my co-host and founder of Latin Live, Eric Osuna, produced by yours truly, and our second engineer and editor is Francisco Patch Fuentes. Our tech director is Jose Moreno. Our graphic guru is Laura Tinoco. And we're executive produced by Mr. Eric Farber himself. Latino Nation is produced by Hustle and Flow Productions.